Assalamualaikum everyone. I hope you guys are doing amazing. So, for this episode, your girl, she did her homework. She came prepared. As I should be. I found a cute Islamic conversation deck thingy. So, we're going to play it. We're going to answer some of those questions, and I think that it has some really interesting conversation starters and some interesting things to think about and to journal about if you're a journal girly like me. So I think it's interesting, and I think that they're definitely questions that will kind of have you reflecting more on some good stuff. So, I did my homework as I should. That's a moment. That's a moment. It's not every day, but when it happens hard. So anyway, let's play. Okay, very first question. What does the ayah, so remember me, I will remember you, mean to you, and how do you remember Allah? Cool. Okay, so I think that this ayah has a lot of different meanings for everybody, literally. And I think that for me, this ayah really taught me that, it's something that I think that, well, I guess the only way that this would make sense is that, when you think about some of the most richest and famous people ever in the world, right? And like they're so famous, like they're incredibly famous, everybody knows them. And even if that's in history, right? They're very well known for the most part. And if they're alive right now, they're very well known. And I think that one of the things that I learned in my life, growing up, especially my teenager phase, is we all have a desire to be seen, to be remembered, and to be heard, and to be paid attention to. And this is something that I think is innate in the human being. I think that this is something that is, we're built in like that. Since we're little and we're children, when we start walking, we start crawling, we instantly look at our parents like, oh my God, are my parents seeing this? Like, oh my God. And your parents hype you up and you get so happy. And then, when you're in kindergarten and first grade and second grade, you draw something for your parents and you're like, look, like you just want to show your parents, you just want your parents to see that as you grow older, whether that's going through middle school and high school, like you want your friends to see, or you post stuff on social media that you think this is going to gain a lot of attraction, it's going to give a lot of hype. Like I feel like there's this general consensus of we constantly do things because we want it to be seen. And we see this happen even with people that are incredibly rich and famous that might not even be Muslim, right? We see so many hospitals, we see so many big companies that were donated on the names of very famous people that donated that much money before they died, and they were like, yo, name it at my name, and they named it at their name. And it's like this type of thing of I want everyone to remember me, or I want to be seen. And I think that that is a crazy desire because it will make you do things that you don't want to do. And I think that that's where a lot of Muslims, unfortunately, when you fall short. And I think that as a woman, and to be quite frank with you, the discussion of modesty, as you grow older as a Muslim woman, you start to learn that the way that you dress, the way that you act, the way that you carry yourself, your character is very, very different than other women. And I think that when you see the way that other women get attention, or you see the way that things tend to flow in a lot more easily, if you're not a hijabi, if you're not a niqabi, if you don't have to dress the way that you dress, you see that, you're generally favored a little bit more in the public eye. You don't have to deal with Islamophobia. You are definitely favored more in different fields of work. And this isn't guilt tripping. This isn't guilt tripping. I feel like before I wore the hijab, I didn't really have anybody I didn't really have a lot of people that are like, go for it. Everybody goes like, bro, like you're going to put it on and you're going to go through stuff. And that was like the only thing people told me. I remember some of my close friends, they were like, yes, 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 yes. Who cares what people think? Who cares what people put it on, put it on. And I, alhamdulillah, I put it on when I had to put it on. So putting it on right when you hit that age of puberty is something that I recommend all girls to do. Do not fall into that realm of whatever your family might say or whatever society might say. I'm going to be honest, and I know I might get some hate for this. It's very common in Pakistani families and I'm not saying this is my family because my parents, like puberty hit, hijab on type of family, right? But it's very common in a lot of Pakistani families, from what I know, is that they delay their daughters wearing the hijab, and they're like constantly like, oh, you know what, when you get to college, and then sometimes when you're in high school, it's like, oh, not in high school because you have to get into a good college, and when you're in a good college, it's not in college because, when you're applying for a job or you're trying to get into your master's, like people don't necessarily have this deep incline towards hijabis and Muslim people and, you know, Islamophobia and everything the third. So it's not like, don't do it. And I feel like the amount of people, amount of parents that I've heard with my own mouth say that is crazy. I've talked to a lot of young girls that are like 14, 15, some of them even being within my own family, and I've always told them, I'm like, don't listen to it, like, put on your hijab, don't listen to it, because, you know, a lot of times our parents, they think that they're doing stuff that is better for us when they're not. And Islamically, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to put it on at an age, then do it. I know lots of girls think that if I take off my hijab, it's going to get easier, but disobeying God never makes anything easier. Allah sends down commands to us in our life and stuff that we have to do to make our life easier. We are sent down the commands of how to, you know, dress ourselves, how to take care of ourselves, how to manage a business, how to be within our family, you know, the different things, whether that's about zakah, whether that's about how we should deal with one another. Every single little ruling in Islam and things that we learn, it's all to make our own life easier. And when we view these things and don't put a proper effort into making these things happen, and we view them as hard, and we don't take the proper steps needed, we make our own life harder. And I think that that's something that I would tell a lot of girls. If you're struggling to wear your hijab and you think that delaying it from high school to college to job to getting married, you know, subhanAllah, I'm gonna tell you something, and this is just a lesson, a learning moment, just for some learning purposes, just for learning purpose. My younger brother's friend came over to our house one time. I think he's like in 6th grade, right? So he came over to our house one time, and he asks very, very interesting questions. He's a very, very chatty little kid. He just asks very, very interesting questions. I've seen him grow up since he was like 2-3 years old. So he views me as his older sister, and he always just asks me everything, and he's like, Baji, what's this? Baji, what's that? I'm just like, oh my goodness. So he just always asks me a bunch of questions. And he asked me this question, and he says to me, Hira Baji, when people get married, when women get married, do they take off their hijab? Are you gonna take off your hijab? And I was staring at him, I'm like, huh? Huh? I was so confused. And he was like, nothing, never mind. And he changed the topic so quick. And I was like, who taught you that? And then he changed the topic so fast. And then he just started like swerving around in topics. And I was like, who taught you that? And he's like, well, every time I see girls get married, they take off their hijab. And you know what? Say what you want, but he's not wrong. I see it all the time. It's very common. I know I'm Pakistani. I'm just speaking from my experience, from what I know. It's very common when a lot of girls get married, they take off their hijab. And it's very insane. I'm not saying all girls do it. I know a lot of girls still do it. It's not that. I'm just saying it's not unknown. It's very common for girls to get married and they take off their hijab. And it's something that kind of blows my mind. And I think it's really cultural, because a lot of times when you're a new bride, people are like, oh, why are you wearing that? Like, you know, you're young, you're this, you're that. Babe, I'm Muslim. Leave me alone. Like, they have all of these things that, like, you know, you should dress like this, you should be like this, whatever. And so they will, like, encourage, you know, whether that's, like, your mother-in-law or like your own parents, like they'll encourage you to take off the hijab because it's your days of youth. I can die anytime. I'm fine. I'll pass on the days of youth of taking off my hijab. I'm good. May Allah protect us. But by the way, you can still look really pretty with your hijab on. I don't know why people have that preference. But, you know, it's very interesting because someone that young could ask such a question of, okay, so when y'all get married, you take off your hijab? And he's asked me some very interesting questions like that before. Like, do you have to pray once you get married? And I was like, huh? Like, what? And it's so interesting because these things are things that a lot of kids think about. Like, you know, because let's be honest, kids learn from example. And when kids see adults get married and they stop praying or they take off their hijab, and, you know, he always just asks me weird questions. And so it's like, these are like just the tip of the iceberg. But these weird questions, right? And whether that's, you know, do you guys have to pray when you get married, or this or that, or hijab? And I have the hijab question is something that I've seen plenty of kids ask. This is something that I see a lot of people ask, even grown adults. So this is not new, but it's always interesting because kids learn from example. And, you know, since essentially kids really do learn from example, like we said, it's like when they see like their older sister, their older cousins, or even like their own parents, like they don't see them praying, they don't see them reading Quran, they don't see them doing these things, it kind of rings a bell. And a lot of the reasons why, you know, some of us, unfortunately, whether that's like I was mentioning earlier with the discussion of modesty and haya and whatnot, as a Muslim woman, as you grow older, even if you're not married, right, that was just what an example was given. But you kind of see how you're treated. And I think that a lot of problems that a lot of hijabis and Muslim women, period, dressing modest have is that, oh, well, I'm not going to get this job if I'm like this. I'm not going to be able to work in this field if I'm like this. If you are a hijabi in healthcare, you're told that your hijab is unsanitary. You hear very interesting things. And I think that one of the things that I've learned in my own personal life is that I've seen incredibly successful people that are not Muslim fall. I've seen non-Muslims that don't necessarily wear the hijab, that do dress the way that, society wants them to dress, that do the activities that society wants them to do. And I've seen them fall face front too. I've seen niqabis and hijabis face a lot of Islamophobia. I've seen it all. And I think that what I've really come to terms with is that I'm not about to fail my real test to pass this test. And that's something that I always tell myself. I'm not going to take off my hijab because it's convenient to you. I don't care if you'd much rather see me as a non-hijabi. I don't care if you think that I look prettier that way. I don't care if you think that I'm going to get a better job that way. Because there is no barakah, no afiyat, no risk, no happiness in what I'm attaining if I have to sacrifice my principles for it. And so for me, I actually, when I, put on this hijab and everyone, gave me like these concepts, and even in high school, like, I heard a lot of stuff from even people around me, especially with the high school that I went to, since I was like the only Muslim there, and it's really a predominantly not a diverse school. I heard a lot of things, and at a lot of given points, I had even teachers ask me like, oh, so I don't remember, like, why are you wearing that? Or like, did you choose this religion yourself? One time I had to do this project where we had to share like a vision board of what we want for upcoming lives, right? So I made a vision board, and one of the things that I put was just like, oh, get better in my faith. It was just a small little thing in the corner, and then there was like other stuff like, school academic related. And I had a teacher ask me, she's like, okay, so we had to go around explaining our vision board, and she was like, so tell me about your faith. Is this something you chose for yourself, or is this something that and then I knew where this was going, and I was very quick. I was like, I chose this for myself. I'm very happy, and this is my decision. And so you hear things, and I heard things even from Muslim people that are like, oh, I don't know if wearing a hijab would be the smartest of idea in college or in high school or here or there. And I was like, I don't care if you think it's a smart idea or a dumb idea. This is what God has told me to do. So I think that as a Muslim woman, you do at a lot of stages in your life, have this desire to be seen, to be heard. And I think that it comes from anybody, even if you're a Muslim man. And even if you're not Muslim, as you grow older, like I said, it's innate within us to have this desire to be seen, to be heard, to, whether that's showing our parents from when we're little, like, oh, look, I drew something, mommy, look at it, or you're taking your first steps and you want them to see, or when you like graduate elementary school and you're like, oh my God, mom, look, and you just want them to see, because it makes you feel more validated, it makes you feel more, better. Than as you grow older and becoming a teenager, whether you're a guy or a girl, like, you see how different life can get. You see that, like, if I start dating around, or if I go out with this person, or if I start partying, if I start dressing like this, like, I'm gonna get this attention. People are going to like me. And even if you say to yourself that you're not somebody who chases validation, when you examine a lot of the sins that, that are commonly done, a lot of it is for that reason, right? Whether that's even committing zina. Zina has a lot of levels. I've talked about zina before, and of course, within the fact that it's a desire and it wasn't controlled and stuff happened, it all starts off. Zina doesn't start off just like I always say. Zina is not something that happens overnight. It's a door that slowly opens up. So it starts off, if you want me to be quite frank with you, with not lowering your gaze. Something so small as not lowering gaze. Seems small in the picture, but it's not small. But it starts off with not lowering your gaze, right? Because you don't just see somebody and be like, okay, it's enough. No, it starts off with not lowering your gaze. And then not lowering your gaze turns to, I want this person to see me. I want to do something that'll get this person's attention. And whether that's dressing a type of way, doing a type of thing, posting stuff that might get their attention. Just like doing stuff in a type of way to gain this person's attention and their, all this and that. It leads one thing to another. And I'm not saying that necessarily leads to zina in all cases. But when you just look at a lot of these things in life, a lot of times we do things for people to see us. And a lot of times we see millionaires, when they're dying, even if they're like atheists, even if they're not Muslim, like they're like, what, I'm donate like $1 million to the hospital, make that hospital my name. This desire that like, okay, I want to be known. And of course it could be done with good intent as well. But we see a lot of millionaires, they want this extensive attention, this extensive type of thing. They're doing extensive PR to be seen, to, this is my new launch, whatever it might be. And of course, we might also consider that some marketing strategies, whatever. There's always this sense of wanting to be seen. And I think that in my life, when I learned that the best place to be seen is Allah's eyes, then I feel like everything changed for me. Because when you remember Allah and you realize that He remembers you, it is something that will change your life. Because no matter how remembered you are by people, you will always be forgotten. You can be an incredibly big millionaire, you can be incredibly famous, you can be incredibly wealthy. You will be forgotten. You can be stuck in a desert, you can be deserted, you can have no followers, you can be going through the hardest trials. No one will know, but Allah will know. Prime example, Nuh alayhi salam, right? Nuh alayhi salam had barely a handful of followers. But Nuh alayhi salam was remembered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so today he's in the Quran, where millions of Muslims read about it, where millions of Muslims have memorized it. At the time, Nuh alayhi salam did not have many followers. He didn't have a lot of people that saw what he did. And if anything, he was made fun of. But Nuh alayhi salam remembered Allah, and so Allah remembered him. Another prime example, Hajar. Hajar ran in the desert 7 times. There's no live stream in the desert. There's no, let me take out my phone at the time and put this on live on IG Reels so everybody can see. There's no, I'm going to go and write a big book about this. Hajar was not, she didn't have a bunch of scribes with her down writing down the entire history. Oh my God, she ran 7 times. No, there was none of that. She remembered Allah, Allah remembered her. And we talk about her till this very day. When Ibrahim alayhi salam left his family, that's not easy for anybody. Leaving your family, your own father, your own family, it's not easy. It wasn't, written down, okay, you know what? Let me write this down. My, incredibly rich and famous scribes that are going to write down my history and preserve it. No, he left his family. He made those sacrifices. He did what he had to do for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembered him. When you remember Allah, Allah remembers you. We are all going to be forgotten at any given point. You can be wealthy, you can be famous, you can be incredibly well off. You are going to be forgotten. Or you can be like someone like Nuh alayhi salam, who barely had any followers, yet millions of people read about him till this very day in the Quran, and millions of people have memorized the Quran, memorizing his story and everything that he did for his people. Even though he had a handful of followers, having a lot of followers, having a lot of people look up to you, being incredibly rich, being incredibly famous, whatever it might be, literally accounts to nothing. You are going to be forgotten so quickly, and I know that everybody says that, but when you are remembered by Allah and you remember Allah, your account is not to be forgotten. Far before everything, before me and you were even born, you didn't know about me, I didn't know about you, we didn't even know about each other, we didn't even know, we weren't even born. We weren't even born. And just like that, at any given point, eventually, we will all be forgotten too. But when you remember Allah and you remember that His watchful eye is on you, and that you want to be seen so deeply by God, and you want to remember God, and He'll remember you, it changes everything. And I really do feel like Nuh alayhi salam's story is one of those things that a lot of people should think about. Because when we have a lot of followers or are really well off, we're like, okay, you know what? Like when I die, like some people are going to remember me. They're not. They might shed a couple tears, but they'll all forget you. They'll all forget you. And so at the end of the day, think about it. It's not necessarily followers. It's not necessarily how many people are, accounting with you in this moment. It's about the fact that when you remember Allah, Allah will keep that alive. Allah will make your good deeds benefit you. Allah will help you. The Prophet, peace be upon him, now obviously he has billions of people that learn about him, that, part of the ummah and everything in the third. But at the time, that wasn't necessarily the case. It wasn't necessarily the case. And he was mocked at, he was made fun of at. People told him, who's going to carry your legacy? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carried it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carried it. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala carries you and your business and what you got going for you, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just carries you, you might not be remembered by everybody in this world, but you'll be remembered by Allah in the highest heavens. And I think that there is nothing more better than that. You'll be remembered by all of the beautiful things that you have done, inshallah. And when you get to Jannah, like what is the bigger reward than that? When you get a reward for something, or you're supposed to get a reward for something, and you're anticipating, when am I going to get that reward? And you think that the person that is supposed to give you that reward has forgotten. Your Lord is not forgetful. So you can die, and bajillion years later, people might forget about you. People might think, oh, I don't even remember what type of Muslim that person was. But God remembers what type of Muslim you were. God remembers that you were a Muslim that deserved Jannah. And so he will give you that. God is not forgetful at all. And I think that that is what that ayah really taught me, that God's not forgetful. And so when you remember God and, he remembers you back, that is probably the only thing in life that I think you should chase so aggressively when it comes in the sense of, wanting to be seen, wanting to be remembered. Doesn't matter what you do for people. You can do so many good things for people and people will still be like, oh yeah, I don't really remember that. Do you remember that? Like, you can give everything and anything for people. We talk about the Ansars and how they gave so much to them when they first came. And it's literally like, just gave up their properties, gave up their homes, gave up everything. And we talk about those sacrifices today because they remembered Allah. They did what they did for Allah, right? And so Allah remembered them. And we still talk about the sacrifices that the Ansar made today. We still talk about the sacrifices that the companions, that the Muslims, that the prophets, how all of them really made today. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Me and you are not prophets. We're not, some super noble people. We're people that try. And when you're a person that tries and you're a person that dies trying and you do it truly for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God does not forget that. And I think that learning that in my teen years was probably the most valuable piece of information. And I hope that that is something a lot of other younger girls and just people in general can learn, especially if you're a girl, because when you're a girl, that temptation, that desire, there's this quote that's like, men want to see and women want to be seen. And that's exactly how the nature of this world is. Don't give anybody anything to see. But even generally, like that constant scene and in a level of constantly wanting to post for people to see what you're up to see what you're doing, to get like this validation that I'm doing this right, or I graduated, let me post this picture, I'm doing this, but like, once in a while I know people do it, but like, this constant thing that I want everybody to see, I want people to see, to kill that, like that sense, that urge of like, I want people to see, and just know that God seeing is very much plenty for you. I rambled a lot, right? Okay, next question. That was a whole podcast episode in one question. Okay, this next question is: showing gratitude, shukr, already in our Islamic way of life? Yes, but I don't think yes and no. Because I think that Islam deeply embeds gratitude. We're even told in the Quran in 14:7, like, if you're grateful, I will surely increase you. We're taught a lot about gratitude, and we see gratitude literally radiating from the prophets, peace be upon all of them. We see Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there's some different books that talk about how at one point they had to boil sticks because they had no food and they were going through such a hard period. And then they also had to tie rocks to their stomach because they were so hungry and there was no food. And when you think about it, me and you go through the minorest inconveniences and we're ready to leave our deen and we don't find anything to be grateful for. Yet them just being on Sirat al-Mustaqim, them just being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, them just knowing that their sacrifices are not going to waste. They did not leave Allah's path over a worldly affair. It's kind of interesting because I think that gratitude is deeply embedded in Islam, and I think that we are taught constantly to be grateful for what you have, and always remember that there's someone who is below than you, who's lesser than you, doesn't have things that you have, right, who might just wish for what you have. And it's kind of that analogy that I know that a lot of y'all heard, and it's kind of, some people might say it's chuggy, but I think it is well said, where if you're driving a car, you think that, okay, I want that car that a person has on the road, they have a better car, but there's a person who's driving a bike and they just wish that they had a car. They just wish that they weren't driving their bike in the cold. And then there's somebody who is walking that just wishes they had a bike. And then there's somebody who is just not able to walk that just wishes they could walk. And then there's some people that, don't even have the capability to see and they just wish that they could see. So I know we've all heard analogies like these before, but I think it's very much important to think about sometimes, because sometimes like you get in your car and like, let's say like your AC is not working, your heat's not working, which is rare a lot of the times, because a lot of us, we just go from our air conditioned homes, our air conditioned cars, work, well kept temperatures. We're not working out, not going too crazy about nothing. We're well taken care of, fed here, fed there. A lot of us, let's just say like your car broke down, and like, let's just say like maybe the AC or the heat's not working, and you're driving and it's hot and you're pissed off, you're angry, oh my god, I hate this car, the AC's not working, There's somebody who probably has a car that the AC or the heat doesn't work all the time. There's a lot of cars out there, that some of the older cars where, maybe it's a broken down car, maybe they don't have money to fix it and they can't fix it. So they don't have the money to fix it and get the AC system fixed, and you're sitting here pissed off because your AC system broke down one day. And then there's somebody who just wished they had a car. Like, there's just so many things in our life to be grateful for and to be thankful for, right? And I think that that's something that us Muslims should really focus in more on, but we don't, because we always want to reach this next level in this dunya. But we should really be concerned about reaching this next level in the akhirat, because that's the level that matters most. So I do think it's kind of unfortunate, because Islam is extensive on gratitude and it's extensive on being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and through all trying times, holding on to Allah, right? Not letting hard times, not letting our du'as not getting answered, right? Like, I've seen this a lot, where du'as don't get answered and people get mad at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And du'as are just a request, right? Du'as are a request. It's not like you are ordering something and you know exactly what's going to come. You're not ordering something off of Amazon. You didn't order, a bag and you're expecting that same bag to show up at your door. You paid for it. You're expecting it. In dua, that's not the case. And you're not paying anything. You're not, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, I ordered this, so this should come. No, that's not how that works. But we treat it like that. And since dua is such a fundamental concept of our deen and it's so big, we misinterpret it and we tend to go astray from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of it. But it's pure misunderstanding. It's pure not understanding the concept of dua within itself. We get mad when Allah doesn't give us what we want. And it's disappointing, because you think about it, like the Prophet, peace be upon him, the best of all creation, had to tie a rock to his stomach because he was so hungry. He went through so much distress, so much hard times. He went through so much. Yet there's me and you who are privileged, well taken care of, well fed, always have food in our refrigerator, always have clean water. We always have a way to go to places. We always have multiple pairs of clothes, changing, whatever that might be. We have a family, and then we're sitting here saying, you know what? My dua did not get answered. I did not pass the exam the way I thought I would. I'm starting to disbelieve in God. God gave you God gave you the ability to breathe. He gave you all your entire functioning body. You're not mad at him for that. He never asked for it. It's a lot to think about. And I think that gratitude, if us Muslims practiced it better and we were more grateful for the fact that a lot of us, alhamdulillah, we're not living in countries where we are, just literally, I don't know. We're not living in countries where we are facing, persecution left and right. We're not going through incredible hard times. No one's denying it. Like, yeah, you might go through Islamophobia, you might go through stuff. It's not easy. And some people might be. Some people might be living in incredibly difficult countries. I know from my listeners, personally, a lot of them, they live in like the UK or the US. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't struggles, but I'm just saying that there's just so many people in the world that have it worse than we do. And I'm not saying to minimize your struggles and be like, oh, you know what, you're depressed, it doesn't matter because guess what, people have it worse. No, I'm not one of those people that believe in that. I'm just saying generally sometimes we live in our bubble so much. We have a very comforting life. We don't like to admit it, but we do have a very comforting life, and we live in a comfort bubble where me and you most likely don't have to worry about where we're going to get food from. We don't have to worry about, if I'm going to have clothes to change into. Me and you don't have to worry about how I'm going to shower. We just go and shower. We just eat. We just change our clothes. We live in a very comforting bubble. And when things don't go our way, or we don't get a dua answered, or we fail an exam, or we don't do good on anything, or we don't get to marry the person that we wanted, or, just little things, we don't have stuff that goes our way, we get very ungrateful, and we live in this bubble of ungratitude when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you so much to be grateful for. I think that Islam preaches gratitude immensely. I think that it's embedded within our teachings. I just think that this is something that we aren't teaching one another, and it's not something that we are willing to be taught, and it's not something that we are willing to practice, because it is something that it's hard to be like, you know what, things didn't go my way, but I'm grateful for this and that, because a lot of times, shaitan, he just wants you to focus on what you don't have. He just wants you to focus on what it could be, what it should have been, but remember past, stuff like that, like just, oh, what it could have been, but if only this happened. Just these hindsight matters. And Islam teaches you, like, no, look ahead, you have all of this with you. And even through some of your biggest hardships, if you are crying yourself to sleep, you had a bed, to sleep on, to cry on. And I get it. Again, I'm not one of those people that are diminishing hardships and saying that if you're depressed and sad and like, oh, stop it because you're so much grateful for. No, I feel like coming from a Pakistani family, and I think generally culturally, and I've talked about this a lot. If this is like the first episode of mind you're listening to, I think that Islam has a very, very big emphasis on seeking help and getting therapy and, taking care of yourself. If you're going through depression, whatever, taking care of yourself and getting help when needed. I think that culture tells us not to. And I think that is really culture that's like, oh, you know what? You're depressed. Oh my God. Like, you're just ungrateful. No, you can be depressed and you can be praying. You can be doing a lot of things. You can be immensely grateful. People have different trials and different tests that they go through. But I do think that just for the average human being, if you're someone who's not going through depression, you're not going through PTSD, you're not going through some of those things, whatever it might be, you're not going through suicidal ideation. A lot of times we're just kind of like, oh, I live a boring life, or I hate my job, or my job is repetitive every day. Like, if you're somebody who's just, or I'm sick and tired of school, I'm sick and tired of this, or I hate the fact that my daughter didn't get an answer, like, just, the common norm problems that a lot of people face. I get it. No one's saying that you should put yourself in places that you hate, or stay depressed, or stay with suicidal ideation, right? No one's saying that. But it's kind of like, just every day wake up and just choose to be a little bit grateful. I'm not sitting here saying that if you have problems, you're depressed and you face suicidal ideation or whatever, that, oh, being grateful is just gonna wipe it all away, and the reason why you have those problems is because you're not grateful. No. The prophets, peace be upon all them, were immensely grateful. They all had lots of problems, did they not? They did. It's foolish and it's stupid to say stuff like that, in my opinion. But I think generally, just something to think about. Not saying that that's gonna, wipe away your problems, or any of the problems that you have is because of that. Just generally saying, wake up and be grateful. Be grateful. I know that you will have problems. We all have problems, but we should never let our problems become so big that we lose sight of why we're here on this dunya. We lose sight of all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. Okay, the next question's very interestingly attached to it. What are 3 things would you like to say thank you for to Allah right now? I always say this. I think the ability to just be able to live, I think that the ability to just be alive, to have a routine, to have yourself going, to just be here, I think that that's something you should be grateful for. I think that the ability always to have clean water, to have a bed, to have a home, to have your family. I think the ability and the just to give thanks for the fact that we know how to pray, we know how to read the Quran, we have the Quran, that we are Muslim, that we have been given this deen. Whether you are someone who converted to Islam or reverted to Islam, or whether you are somebody who's always been Muslim, like the ability to know this deen, I think that there should be a sense of gratitude that you're spending your time listening to an Islamic podcast and not anything else. Ooh, I'm kidding. I know that's something I'm grateful for. I'm grateful that my time is being used doing this. I just think that there's a lot of things to be grateful for. I think that there's gratitude in just being able to do little things. Hashtag gratefulness. Hashtag grateful Hera. Hashtag, I don't know what the next hashtag is. Like, next question. What does the mosque mean to you? That's cute. Feels like home. I feel like no matter what mosque you go to, they all just kind of feel like home. Like, they all just kind of feel immense amount of peace. I feel like I remember the first time. I remember when I first moved and I was very, very having a hard time because there wasn't a lot of stuff around me, not a lot of Muslim community around me. And I remember the first time that I went to go pray Jummah after I was going through so much, right? Like, I was going through a really hard time. And so I thought to myself, like, how about I go to the masjid and pray Jummah, right? And then I went to the masjid and prayed Jummah and I heard the adhan, and I just wanted to bawl my eyes out. And I felt so at home. I felt so happy. It was just everything that I could ask for and more. And I think that generally, even now when I go to the mosque, I just want to bawl my eyes out. I feel like something about the mosque just makes me want to bawl my eyes out, because I feel it's like a feeling where you feel so grateful to be, in a place where everyone is just there to remember Allah. And I think that that's something that I love a lot. And I think that I know that there's a lot of people, I think that I know, that doesn't make any sense. I know a lot of people that do have difficult relationships with the mosques because of some problems that have come up in their life, or the people there. I know that that's a common place where you kind of get mosque hurt. I don't like to use that term. Or you had experiences from people that weren't so pleasant. And I always, I always tell people it's the person that hurt you. It's not the it's not the mosque. I know some people that are terrified to walk into the mosque. I know a lot of people actually, unfortunately, that are terrified to go into the mosque, and they're like, I'm gonna be judged, I'm gonna be looked down upon. But that's the mosque is not the place for that. Allah's home is a home where you go to worship Him. You take, you learn more about your deen. You learn more about why you're there, and it's just a place where you get closer to God. And I feel like the people that are hindrance to that, and especially in Allah's home, it's not. I don't think it's something that is looked down upon lightly. And I don't think that that's something that should be acceptable. But I don't think that you should ever remove your relationship with God or stop going to the mosque because of the people there. If it's, I just think that that's something that is important. Having this relationship with remembering Allah, and even if not at the mosque, like, just praying at home, like having an area in your home where it just feels like, like I can just bawl my eyes out here. This is my comfort space, my little corner. And I have quite a few corners in my house that I have literally abducted from my family. I'm like, this is my corner, don't come here. That I've abducted. And I think that it's not even like a mosque, just in general. I think that just remembering Allah should be something that brings you immense peace. And I think that going to the mosque, I know a lot of people are nervous. They feel like, oh, I'm gonna get judged, or they feel concerned. Just go. I have a friend who was incredibly introverted. I knew her for almost a year, and in the first 6 months of me knowing her, she made it clear that I'm incredibly introverted. She was super sweet, super loving, super big on like texting, let's talk, but she was very introverted. Like, she did not like to meet up. She didn't like to come to plans. And she made it clear, she's like, bro, like, I'm literally trying, but I'm just so used to being in this cocoon of not meeting up with people, not doing things for the past 3 years, that whenever you come to me and you're energetic, like, oh, hey, let's go here, let's go do this with that, I'm just kind of like, what's going on with this girl? And I was just like, girl, like, it's not that deep. Like, we can just hang out. Like, we don't got anything elaborate, right? And I knew she was really trying. So I the next, section, I started hanging out with her, and I like started to call her more. So slowly, I just started to kind of call her more, and I was like, hey, like, you can come, like, I'm alone, it's just me, I'm just studying, whatever, and she would start showing up. And then it would be like every morning, she'd be like, okay, so where are you at? Because, like, I'm gonna come, let's hang out. And then it slowly started to become like, like, she got more comfortable with hanging out some of the other people in our friend group. And then she was just kind of like, okay, let's go out for lunch, let's do this, let's do that. And like, she always said this to me, she's like, Hira, you're like this energetic ball, and you literally came and you like pulled me from my introvert corner. And I'm so glad you did, because like, we had so many good experiences. And I think that that's the thing for a lot of people. Like, sometimes people are really introverted, not because that's how they've always been, but because like for the past few years, or just for some time, like they haven't necessarily had anybody they clicked with, or they don't have a lot of interaction with people, whatever that might be, or they might be even consumed really much in their own problems. And that was kind of the case with some of my friends, where they're really consumed in their own problems. And I was like, okay, we got to get you out of this, so let's go somewhere, let's do something. You want to do something? And they started to come out of it. And then they always, like, the people think about it, and I think people do. I know for me, like, some of my friends, I'm always grateful that they took me out of my little corners whenever I got like super sad or got too consumed in problems, and they feel the same. And so I think that, alhamdulillah, may Allah keep them that way, but I think that it's important. So like, even in the mosque, like, when you meet people, like, sometimes people are going through things and they haven't, it's been a minute since they've been able to talk it out with somebody. Like, just go up to somebody. The worst thing is they're gonna be like, oh no, I don't want to hang out with you. And then you're just like, okay, it's okay, maybe some other time, whatever. Or just like, even if you have someone's name and their phone number and whatever, and like, you all know each other, you're acquaintances, and they're going through a problem, like, just be there. Just be there. Some people, they really do want to create friendships. They do want to get out of their bubble. They do want to not be so introverted. They do want to make memories, but they're just really shy, and it's really hard, or they're really nervous, or they're going through a lot, or they just need someone to make the first move. And I made the first move in a lot of things. I am a first move type of gal in everything, because I'm one of those people that if I don't do it, it just don't seem to get done. I'm kidding. In some cases it's like that, and in some cases when I know someone's genuinely trying and they just kind of need me to make the first move to kind of help them and start them up, I do not mind at all making the first move. I always do, because I know that that's something that sometimes that people just kind of need to maybe feel more comfortable. And then after that, you'll be shocked. Some of your most introverted friends will be making the moves, will be making the plans, they'll be so excited, all of that. So give them a shot. Give people that you even see occasionally a shot. People are going through things. It takes time for everybody to warm up and open up. I mean, look at me, for example. I was so quiet when I started this podcast. Now look at me. I don't shut up. But anyway, I hope y'all like this episode. I know it's long. I know it didn't answer a lot of questions, but inshallah, I'll make a part 2 to this. I hope you guys like this episode. Please give me some feedback. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourself. Assalamualaikum.